Hey guys, so it's really late at night and I thought I would make some videos basically talking about some things while I still had the chance to do so because uh, considering what's going to happen next week, I don't know what's going to happen, after next week, so I don't know how much longer I'm going to have the opportunity to keep making videos. So I thought while I still had the chance, and since I couldn't go to sleep tonight because I was having trouble sleeping, I thought I would make some videos basically talking about some things that I wanted to talk about while I still had the chance to do so. If you don't understand my situation right now, then I would recommend watching some of my other previous videos. That way you can sort of understand what's going on. But this video should make a lot more sense. Even if you haven't watched some of those other videos, because for this video I'm just going to be talking about my childhood and what my childhood was like. So I was adopted when I was really little. I was like 5, I think, when I was adopted. My birth family, I had two sisters, two blood sisters. One was younger than me, one was older than me, but the one that was older than me had actually Down syndrome, so because of that I always felt like I was the oldest because I'm not going to explain what Down syndrome is, but if you don't understand what Down syndrome is, then you should just look it up. But because she had Down syndrome, I always felt like I was the oldest. But I was adopted when I was like 5 years old, around that time. And my younger sister, she was actually adopted with me into the same family, but our older sister was not. And I'm going to try and condense this story just a little bit just to make things go a little faster. That way I don't have to talk forever and explain. That way you don't have to hear all the unimportant things. But I was always happy that my little sister, got to be adopted with me because I always felt like I wasn't alone that way. And I felt that was good for me because I wasn't adopted into the best family. I didn't have the best childhood growing up, and I was always glad that at least I could have my little sister there with me, and I was always very protective of her because I knew I was having such a hard time growing up, and I knew that that had to be extremely hard for her since she was younger, always younger than me. So I was adopted into a really big family. I grew up in poverty, and I was adopted into a family of 7, including me and my sister. So there was 7 kids under this household, and we were always in poverty. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about most in this video are the medications that we were put under. Now, pretty much right from the very beginning, once we were adopted, we were immediately put on medication for something. Everyone was on medication for something. I remember there are a couple of the kids there that had to take like a handful of pills every day, and it was absolutely insane. But everyone was on medication for something. Immediately, it was just like right from the very beginning, we were diagnosed with something, I don't think that these people should ever have been adopting. And as a result of this, I don't have good feelings about adoption. I have bad experiences with it. And I also do not believe in medication as a result of my experiences because I have very bad, experiences with medication. So to speed things, the story along a bit, what happened was we were put on medication right from the very beginning, and I was actually from the very beginning I was diagnosed with ADHD, which I believe I really don't believe that I should have been diagnosed with ADHD. I believe I was just a normal child, and I could make a whole video basically talking about ADHD, but I'm not gonna do that. Maybe I'll do that like in another video if I feel like it. But to speed the story along, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and ever since right from the very beginning I was put on medication for ADHD. And the side effects were very severe. Everything comes with a side effect. I do not believe in putting kids on medication for ADHD because I don't think it's right to put children on medication for simply just being a kid. So the side effects really became a part of me growing up. And when a child is very young and their personality is developing, I believe that's a very terrible time, the worst time that you can introduce medication, especially ADHD medication, into a child's body, because what medication does, especially the ADHD medication does to a kid, is it basically shuts down their personality. It makes them become very quiet, very inactive, and very reserved. It also affects their appetite a lot. I remember growing up, I was like never hungry, when I was on the medication, and that really became a part of who I was, growing up. I was never hungry a lot. And I always thought that was a bad thing, because I felt like my body, when my body should have been hungry, it just wasn't. But I could talk about that in another video. One of the biggest things that affected me the most was how these drugs really shut down my personality, and I never had a chance to really express who I was, because when I was on the medication, I never wanted to do anything. I always wanted to be quiet, and I never felt like I had a choice to do anything else when I was on the medication. So that's one of the biggest things that really affected me growing up, was the medication and the side effects of the medication. And this was like that for all the other kids that were in the house also. Everyone was diagnosed with something. Everyone was on medication for something. And I never got to be, the kid, like a normal kid that, could express themselves freely. And this affected me like in school also, because in school, as a result of all this, I became known as the quiet kid in school, who never talked, who never said anything. And I had heard rumors that even the teachers referred to me as the phantom child, because they'd never notice that I was there. Like one moment I would be there, and then the next moment I'd be gone. That type of a thing, because they would never know when I would leave or enter a room, because I was just always that quiet. And that's really what defined my childhood growing up, just always being the quiet kid that no one ever noticed. So that was basically my childhood growing up. I was just always, the quiet kid. And I always blamed it on, the medication for making me that way. Because since I was put on the medication before my personality could properly develop, I just had a personality made up of drugs and medication. I could go over more things that really defined my childhood also, but I think that was really the main thing that defined my childhood, was the medication. And further along, after I turned like 18 or something, I decided that well, first off, they never wanted me to go off the medication. I had brought it up many times, and they always told me the same thing. They always made up some excuse for keeping me on the medication, And they always made me feel stupid whenever I would bring up the question, maybe I don't need to be on the medication. But they would always say, make me feel like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid, you don't have a right to say anything. But I always felt like I had the right to say something about what went into my body and what I put into my body. So after I turned 18, I think I decided that I was just gonna stop taking the medication regardless of what they said, because I felt like I knew I didn't need it. So I stopped taking the medication secretly. Like I would pretend to take the medication. This medication that I had taken all my life, every single day, both in the morning and in the afternoon. I decided to just stop taking it, and what I did was I would secretly, I would pretend like I would take it, but secretly I would like hide it in my hand or hide it in my pocket or something. I would just, just let a hand. I would just like throw it away later once, no one was looking. So that's how I got myself off of the medication. And it wasn't easy to get myself entirely off of the medication because the side effects really became very permanent and severe once I got into my once I started going further along, you know, started growing up a little more. The side effects just became too permanent. Some side effects became permanent. One of the side effects that I really thought would be permanent, that I thought I would have with me forever, was the appetite, you know, side effect. Because my appetite, you know, I was never hungry when I was on the medication, and when I was off of the medication, it's like I had two modes. One, I would be like not hungry at all, and the other mode I could be like really, really hungry. And then that's how it used to be in the beginning when I started to try to get myself off of the medication. And what happened was, when I was trying to get myself off of the medication was I would do it slowly. So one day in the beginning, I'm pretty sure I was like, one day I would not take it, the next day I would take it, and then I would increase the days of which I would not take these pills, and then eventually I would go like maybe 1 week I'll take, maybe one day this week I'll take the medication, then, you know, I'd take it again, you know, another day, like a week from now. And then eventually, you know, I would just increase that gap, you know, just every other day, you know, because I couldn't just take my body off the medication completely just like that. At first I wanted to do that, but I realized very quickly that my body would just my body was just not used to not being on the medication. Like, the side effects would just, you know, increase dramatically. Like, my appetite was affected, my sleeping habits were affected. You know, it's everywhere in my life was just affected, you know, if I was not on the medication. And I was trying to get my body used to not being on it anymore because I knew I didn't need it. But it's just that my body had just become so used to being on it that I'd had to get rid of these, you know, side effects as much as I could before I could completely get myself off of them. Of course, now I don't need them anymore. I haven't taken any sort of medication since, I don't even remember the last time I took any medication. It's been so long. But I haven't needed the medication in a really long time now. But it wasn't easy to do at first. Eventually, my appetite did go back to normal, as normal as it could be. Of course, my appetite still sort of fluctuates every now and then. But that, fortunately, I would say that it went back to normal after a certain time, you know, to what it should be, to what a normal person should, to what a normal person's appetite should be. But of course, I could never reverse the side effects that it had on my personality. I would always be, you know, very quiet and reserved kid because that's what my personality had been built on from the very beginning. But of course, now I no longer need the medication, and I haven't taken medication in like a really long time. So that was my childhood, and I just thought I needed to make a video basically describing what my childhood was like. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video, I hope.